You never imagined that day would be the last time they underestimated you. That moment when the world tried to reduce you to nothing, tried to fit you into a transparent glass box where everything could be controlled. But something inside you roared different. Something they couldn't name, couldn't tame, couldn't erase no matter how hard they tried. They spent time, energy, resources trying to decipher what moves you. They wanted to map your soul like it was simple code. A predictable equation that could be solved with their shallow formulas of behavior. But when they looked deep, they found something that made them step back in fear. A monster that refuses chains. A force that breaks every system designed to contain it. They called you a problem because you disrupt the system. They labeled you an enigma because your essence doesn't fit in the manuals they studied their whole lives to dominate others. And you know why? Because you weren't born to please anyone who lacks the courage to face their own shadow. You were born to shatter the illusion of control they desperately cling to. Have you ever felt like nobody understands you? That sensation of loneliness in the crowd, where thousands of voices speak at once, but none of them touch the hidden truth you carry inside. It's like being surrounded by mirrors that only reflect false versions of who you really are. And that isolation? That's not weakness. That's proof you exist on a different frequency. Your scars are not marks of weakness. They are symbols of resistance. Living proof that you survived internal wars that would destroy anyone who judges you. Each pain you faced was a forge molding something stronger, sharper, more real. While they lived in comfort, you were being refined by fire that most people will never endure. I challenge you not to feel anything when you realize this. While you bled in silence, they created theories about your life. While you shattered yourself to rebuild, they sold cheap solutions to fix you. But the truth hurts when they realize you already healed yourself. You didn't need their permission, their advice, or their validation to become whole again. Everything they try to use to measure you, their social rules, their convenient diagnoses, their empty motivational advice, breaks limits they don't even know exist. You are the pattern breaker that terrifies those who live by predictability. And that, my friend, is pure power. The kind of power that can't be bought, taught, or imitated by those who fear the unknown. Nobody wants you to know this, but your difference is exactly what makes you unbeatable. You are a walking reminder that not everyone was born to be domesticated. Your authenticity exposes the farce of those who sell masks as if they were identities. You make them uncomfortable because you refuse to play the game everyone else accepted without question. Wake up to life. Stop searching for validation where there's no courage to see beyond the obvious. Stop accepting being pruned just to fit in the mediocre garden they prepared for you. You're not an ornamental plant. You're the storm that tears down fences. You're the earthquake that reminds them nothing they build can contain what was born to be free. You are this inexplicable phenomenon they fear to mention out loud. The unexpected answer to the trivial plans they make about your existence. The fear of the unknown they feel when they look at you is just the reflection of their own cowardice. They project their limitations onto you because facing your freedom would mean admitting their own imprisonment. They will try to stop you. They'll invest fortunes trying to silence your essence, build walls around you, create narratives that diminish you. But each attempt only writes their own failure in capital letters, because only the strong resist the type of pressure you endure while breathing. You've already survived what they use as excuses to quit. You know what really happens when they stop trying to understand you? The awakening happens. That moment of transformation when you realize that your pain will become strength, that every rejection was fuel, that every closed door forced you to build your own path. That moment when you stop asking for permission and start taking what's already yours by right. Comment if you've ever lived this, the exact moment you decided to show who you are, without filters, without masks, without fear of consequences. Because deep down, you always knew they will never understand you. And that was never the problem. The problem would be if you needed them to understand. The tragedy would be if their approval mattered more than your truth. This is the awakening of those born rebel by nature, of those who carry inner strength that doesn't need an audience to exist, of those who discovered that freedom and overcoming are not destinations, but daily choices to do differently. even when the whole world screams the opposite, even when standing alone means standing in your power. They spent years trying to decode you, tried every method, every technique, every psychological trick in their arsenal to understand what makes you tick. They wanted your blueprint, your instruction manual, the secret formula that explains why you refuse to bend. But here's what they discovered. You can't be explained by their limited frameworks. They brought in experts, analysts, people who claimed to read souls like open books, invested everything they had, money, time, credibility, trying to map your essence into something controllable. They needed you to fit their understanding of how humans should operate, should react, should submit. But when they finally peered into the core of who you are, all they found was darkness that stared back. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of untamed power, the kind that exists beyond their comprehension, outside their ability to classify or contain. You became the puzzle that breaks their theories, the exception that destroys their rules. And that terrified them more than any threat they'd ever faced. Because if you can't be understood, you can't be controlled. If you can't be measured by their standards, you can't be limited by their expectations. You are the living proof that their entire system of breaking people down and rebuilding them in acceptable shapes is fundamentally flawed. You are the hidden truth they never wanted anyone to discover. What they call unpredictable, you call freedom. What they label as dangerous, you recognize as authentic. They see chaos where you see possibility. They constructed entire institutions designed to explain human behavior, to predict responses, to manufacture conformity. And then you walked in and shattered every assumption. The frustration in their eyes when they realize they can't pin you down, that's admiration disguised as confusion. The anger when their methods fail, that's respect hidden behind professional disappointment. Because deep in their bones, they know the truth. You possess something they've spent their lives trying to eliminate from themselves. You carry the untamed essence they sacrificed to fit in, the wild inner strength they traded for acceptance, the raw authenticity they buried to climb social ladders. Every time they fail to understand you, they're confronted with what they lost. And that wound, that realization of their own self-betrayal, cuts deeper than any blade. They'll write papers about you, create case studies, develop new theories to explain your existence. But it's all just elaborate denial. All sophisticated ways of avoiding the simple truth. Some souls were never meant to be domesticated. Some fires burn too bright to be contained. Some spirits refuse every cage, no matter how gilded. You know what drives them crazy? It's not that you're difficult. It's that you make it look effortless, while they struggle to maintain their masks. You breathe freely without one. While they calculate every move for maximum approval, you move with natural power that needs no permission. While they perform for validation, you simply exist in your truth. This is your greatest weapon and you don't even wield it consciously. Your mere existence is an act of rebellion. Your resistance to their frameworks is automatic, instinctive, unstoppable. You don't try to be incomprehensible. You just refuse to shrink yourself into comprehensible. The mystery isn't complex. You're not hiding secrets or playing games. The mystery is that you remain whole in a world designed to fragment people into manageable pieces. You stayed true while everyone else learned to fracture. You chose authenticity in an age of calculated personas. And now they're realizing their mistake. Every resource spent trying to understand you was wasted because understanding was never the point. Control was. And you, magnificent creature, are the force that can never be controlled. You are the storm they should have respected instead of trying to predict. That frustration they feel, let it fuel you. Every failed attempt to decode your essence is proof of your power. Every theory that crumbles against your reality is validation that you're doing exactly what you were born to do. Break the pattern, refuse the cage, remain beautifully, terrifyingly incomprehensible. You're standing in a room full of people, yet you've never felt more alone. Voices echo around you. Laughter bounces off walls. Conversations flow like rivers, but none of it reaches the place where you actually exist. They're talking at you, not to you. They're looking at your face, not seeing your soul. This isn't the loneliness of physical isolation. This is something far more devastating, far more suffocating. This is the loneliness of being surrounded by those who refuse to see the hidden truth of who you are, of being visible but invisible at the same time. They think they know you because they know your name. They believe they understand you because they've seen you smile. But what they're witnessing is the performance, the surface, the version of you that moves through their world without disturbing their comfort. The real you that remains untouched, unseen, unknown. You've learned to navigate crowds while carrying this weight, perfected the art of small talk while your mind screams in languages they'll never speak, mastered the skill of nodding along while knowing that everything they believe about you is fundamentally wrong. And the exhaustion of it, that never ends. The worst part isn't that they don't understand. You made peace with that long ago. The worst part is how they pretend they do, how they offer advice for problems they can't comprehend, how they diagnose your struggles using frameworks that don't apply to your reality. They see your silence and call it shyness. They witness your resistance and label it stubbornness. They observe your boundaries and diagnose it as fear. Every interpretation wrong, every conclusion backwards, every judgment a complete miss. Yet they speak with such confidence, such certainty about who you are. You've tried explaining, haven't you? Attempted to bridge the gap, to translate your inner world into words they might grasp. But it's like describing color to those who've only ever seen in black and white. The vocabulary doesn't exist. The reference points don't align. So you stopped trying, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. Because every failed attempt at connection was another wound. Every misunderstanding was another reminder that you're operating on a frequency they can't tune into. Every blank stare in response to your truth was another nail in the coffin of hope. This isolation forged something in you that comfort never could. While they bonded over shared superficiality, you went deep into yourself. While they found connection in conformity, you discovered strength in solitude. While they needed validation from the crowd, you learned to validate your own existence. You incommoda the system because you don't need what they need. Your self-sufficiency threatens their interdependence. Your ability to stand alone exposes their inability to do the same. Your authenticity in isolation reveals their performance in connection, and that makes them deeply uncomfortable. They'll call you cold, distant, unavailable. They'll say you don't let people in, that you're too guarded, too careful with your trust. But what they don't see is that you're not keeping them out. You're protecting what they've proven they can't handle. You're guarding what they've shown they'll misinterpret. This loneliness in the crowd isn't weakness. It's the price of refusing to dilute yourself for easier digestion. It's the cost of maintaining your inner strength in a world that demands you fracture it for social acceptance. It's the toll of being whole in spaces designed for fragments. And here's what they'll never tell you. Some of them feel it too. That isolation, that disconnection, that sense of being fundamentally alone despite the bodies pressed close. But unlike you, they numb it. They drown it in noise, in activity, in desperate attempts at belonging that require them to abandon themselves. You chose differently. You chose to feel the full weight of it, to sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood rather than compromise your truth for comprehension, to accept the loneliness rather than trade your essence for company. That choice, that's where your power lives. Look at your hands. They're steady now, but they remember the trembling. They remember gripping the edge of sanity when everything inside you was collapsing. Those scars you hide under long sleeves, both visible and invisible, they're not marks of defeat. They're evidence you survived wars that would have buried anyone else. Every choice you made that others judged, it was made in trenches they never had to stand in. Every decision they criticized from their safe distance, it was calculated under fire they never felt. They see the outcome and call it wrong, but they weren't there for the impossible situation that demanded it. Your pain will become strength, but first it has to break you down to your foundations. First it has to strip away everything you thought you were. First it has to burn through every comfortable lie you told yourself about who you needed to be. And you let it, not because you wanted to, but because you had no other choice. The nights you didn't sleep because your mind wouldn't stop replaying every failure. every loss, every moment you fell short. Those nights forged something in you that comfort never could. While others dreamed peacefully, you were being rebuilt in darkness. While they rested, you were learning to carry weight that would crush their spirits. They look at you now and see someone who's together, someone who functions, someone who moves through the world with strength. What they don't see is the monster of resilience you had to become just to survive. The battles you fought alone in your head, the demons you wrestled while they slept soundly. You carry scars they'll never see, not because you hide them well, but because they lack the vision to recognize what transformation looks like. They want neat, inspirational stories of overcoming. But your journey was messy, brutal, ugly in ways that don't fit their narrative frameworks. So they smooth over the reality, missing the actual power in your survival. The truth hurts when you realize how much you've survived that others would use as excuses to quit. How much you've endured that they would leverage into permanent victimhood. How many times you got back up when staying down would have been justified, even understandable. But you didn't stay down. Those internal wounds, the ones that don't show up on X-rays or medical charts, they required courage most people will never need to summon. Healing invisible damage is harder than fixing broken bones. At least broken bones get casts, get sympathy, get visible evidence that something was wrong. Your wounds? You healed those in silence while maintaining appearances. Every scar tells a story of a moment you could have given up but didn't. A second you could have surrendered but chose resistance instead. An instant you could have accepted defeat but found one more ounce of fight. These aren't decorations. These are battle honors earned in wars against yourself, against circumstances, against fate itself. Only the strong resist the kind of pressure that leaves permanent marks. The weak break cleanly, catastrophically, in ways that get them rescued. But you bent, you cracked, you splintered, yet somehow you held. And that partial survival, that refusing to break completely, that's where the real inner strength developed. They'll never understand the weight you carry so effortlessly now. How those scars, those wounds, those pieces of yourself you lost along the way actually made you more complete, not less. How every transformation through pain gave you range, depth, perspective they can't access from their protected positions. You don't talk about it because there's no vocabulary for it. No words that capture the specific agony of choosing to keep going when every cell in your body votes for surrender. No language that conveys what it costs to rebuild yourself from fragments while the world demands you function normally. So you move through their world carrying these hidden truths like weighted armor. Each scar a reminder of your power. Each wound proof of your capacity to survive what should have ended you. They see strength. You know it's accumulated resistance to pain that would paralyze them. Those wounds you think make you broken, they're actually what make you unbreakable. The places where you fractured and fused back together are stronger than original bone. The scars you carry are armor now, and the pain that forged you, that's the force that makes you unstoppable when they're still deciding whether to start. They pull out their measuring tape every time you walk into a room. Their mental checklist starts clicking. Behavior, acceptable or deviant. Responses, normal or concerning. Choices, logical or flawed, like you're a specimen to categorize, a problem to solve, a deviation from their precious norm that needs correction. They've built entire systems around this obsession with measurement, created frameworks, developed assessments, designed tests that claim to quantify the unquantifiable. Your complexity, your depth, your essence, reduced to numbers on scales that were never designed to capture what you actually are. And they call this understanding. Watch their faces when you don't fit. That flicker of confusion, then frustration, then that determined look that says they're going to figure you out no matter what it takes. They adjust their theories, revise their diagnoses, consult their manuals, never once considering that maybe, just maybe, their tools are inadequate. You disrupt the system not because you're trying to, but because you exist outside parameters they can comprehend. Every rule they apply bounces off. Every diagnosis they attempt fails to stick. Every convenient label they try to attach slides right off your authentic self like water off stone. They tell you to be more open, more vulnerable, more willing to let people in. What they really mean is be more predictable, more manageable, more willing to conform to behavioral patterns they recognize. Because your truth, your actual essence, that terrifies them beyond measure. It's too raw, too real, too unfiltered for their sanitized worldview. So they hide behind professionalism, behind concern, behind claims of wanting to help. But help means making you fit. Support means smoothing your rough edges. Growth, in their vocabulary, translates to surrender. Give up what makes you different. Abandon what makes you powerful. Become digestible, and they'll finally approve. The truth hurts when you realize their entire system depends on your compliance, on you accepting their right to measure, categorize, and judge your existence, on you believing they have authority to determine what's normal, what's acceptable, what's allowed. Their power exists only as long as you grant it legitimacy. But you stopped playing that game, didn't you? Stopped pretending their metrics mattered. Stopped accepting their frameworks as gospel truth. Stopped seeking validation from systems designed to diminish anything that breaks the pattern of comfortable conformity. And that's when everything changed. Stop seeking approval from those who need you small to feel big. Their judgments say nothing about your worth and everything about their limitations. Their inability to understand you reveals their narrow range, not your complexity. Their need to fix you exposes their broken lens, not your damaged state. Every time they fail to measure you accurately, you're proving something they refuse to acknowledge. That their systems of judgment are fundamentally flawed. That their tools of assessment can't capture authentic existence. That their entire framework collapses when confronted with someone who simply refuses to be reduced. You are the living proof that their rules are suggestions, their norms are choices, their standards are arbitrary, and that realization, that threat to everything they've built their identities around, that's why they fear you. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're free in ways they traded away long ago. You incommodate the system by existing unapologetically, by carrying inner strength they can't measure, by demonstrating courage they can't quantify, by embodying truth that doesn't need their certification. You are the measurement breaking the measuring tape, the question dissolving the questionnaire, the reality exceeding the theory. Their judgment is not your burden to carry. Their confusion is not your problem to solve. Their need for you to fit is not your responsibility to fulfill. You owe them nothing. Not explanation, not justification, not transformation into something their limited vision can comprehend. Let them judge. Let them measure. Let them fail repeatedly at capturing what you are in their inadequate frameworks. Because every failure is proof of your power. Every stumped expert is validation of your complexity. Every broken theory is evidence that you were never meant to be understood by those too afraid to break their own limits. What they call your problem is actually your power. That thing they keep trying to fix, suppress, medicate, or therapize out of existence. That's the exact source of your strength. The very trait they want you to eliminate is the one that makes you dangerous to their comfortable status quo. They fear what they can't categorize. And you, my friend, you're the walking embodiment of everything their systems weren't designed to handle. You're the glitch in their matrix, the variable in their equation that makes the whole calculation collapse. You're not broken. You're revolutionary in your refusal to be fixed. Think about it. Who taught you that being different was wrong? Who convinced you that standing out was something to apologize for? Who sold you the lie that your uniqueness was a flaw requiring correction? It wasn't you. It was them, projecting their fear of the unknown onto your beautiful, chaotic, uncontainable existence. You weren't born to please the masses living in self-imposed cages. You weren't designed to fit neatly into their organizational charts of acceptable humanity. You weren't created to make their lives easier by being predictable, manageable, controllable. You were born to disrupt, to challenge, to force evolution through your mere existence. They see revolution and call it rebellion. They witness transformation and diagnose it as instability. They observe your courage to exist authentically and label it as defiance. But here's the hidden truth they don't want you to realize. Their need to pathologize your difference is admission of their own limitation. Every time they try to diminish what makes you different, they're revealing their own smallness. Every attempt to convince you to conform exposes their desperation to validate their own choices to surrender. Every judgment they cast is actually self-judgment reflected onto a mirror they can't stand to look into directly. You are the reminder that their sacrifice wasn't necessary, that all those pieces of themselves they traded for acceptance were sold too cheap, that the comfort they chose over authenticity was a raw deal. And that realization, that's unbearable for people who've spent decades justifying their self-betrayal. So they need you to be wrong. They need your difference to be pathology, not possibility. They need your rebellion to be immaturity, not wisdom. Because if you're right, if your path is valid, if your choices are legitimate, then everything they gave up was lost for nothing. And that truth hurts too much to face. You incommodate the system simply by thriving outside it, by demonstrating that happiness exists beyond their approved pathways, by proving that success doesn't require their specific recipe, by showing that freedom is possible for those brave enough to break limits instead of accepting them as natural law. Your difference is your superpower, disguised as weakness by those who need you weak. Your refusal to conform is strength masquerading as stubbornness in the eyes of those who've forgotten what conviction feels like. Your authentic self is power that they've trained you to see as liability because unleashed, it threatens their entire worldview. What they fear most isn't that you're wrong, it's that you're right, that your way works, that your resistance to their programming leads to outcomes they can't achieve through compliance, that your willingness to do differently produces results their approved methods never could. You are living proof their limitations are chosen, not given. They will never understand you, and that's exactly the point. Understanding would require them to expand beyond comfortable boundaries they've spent lifetimes establishing. It would demand they question foundational beliefs they've built entire identities around. It would force them to admit possibilities they've convinced themselves don't exist. So let them fear your difference. Let them be uncomfortable with your power. Let them struggle to understand what you've never needed explained. Because their fear is validation. Their discomfort is confirmation. Their confusion is proof that you're operating on frequencies they can't access from inside their self-constructed prisons. You are the monster they created when they tried to cage what was meant to roam free. Only the strong resist the pressure to become acceptable. Only the courageous maintain their essence when the entire world votes for modification. And only the truly powerful recognize that what others fear in them is actually what they should cultivate, protect, and unleash without apology or hesitation. Your difference isn't your burden. It's your birthright, your weapon, your liberation. You are the storm they see forming on the horizon and immediately start preparing shelters against. The unpredictable force of nature that doesn't follow their weather patterns, doesn't respect their forecasts, doesn't care about their plans for clear skies. You are chaos to their order, disruption to their routine, the variable that makes every equation unsolvable. They built their lives like houses of cards, delicate structures requiring perfect stillness to maintain. Then you walk in, simply existing with your natural intensity, and the whole thing starts trembling. Not because you're trying to destroy anything, but because your authentic presence creates winds their fragile constructions can't withstand. Watch how they react when you enter a space. The subtle shift in energy, the unconscious repositioning, the way conversations adjust to accommodate or avoid your presence. They feel you before they see you. Your power precedes you like thunder before lightning, warning them that something beyond their control approaches. You are the tempest they've spent years trying to predict, contain, redirect. They want to believe storms can be tamed, that wild forces can be domesticated with enough planning and infrastructure. But you keep proving them wrong. You keep showing them that some things were never meant to be controlled, only respected or avoided. Their fear isn't rational, it's primal. It's the same instinct that makes animals seek shelter when atmospheric pressure drops. They sense the transformation you bring, the change you represent, the upheaval your mere existence promises. And change, real change, terrifies people who've invested everything in keeping things exactly as they are. So they avoid you when they can, keep you at arm's length with polite distance and professional boundaries, create social barriers disguised as concern, regulations masked as protection. Anything to maintain the illusion that they can keep the storm at bay if they just build the walls high enough, thick enough, strong enough. But resistance only works temporarily against forces of nature. Eventually, the storm arrives. Eventually, your truth breaks through their carefully constructed defenses. Eventually, they have to face what they've been avoiding. That you possess something they traded away, something they can't reclaim, something that exposes every compromise they made in the name of safety. You represent the freedom they convinced themselves was irresponsible, the authenticity they decided was impractical, the power they surrendered for predictability. Every time they look at you, they're confronted with the road not taken, the self not chosen, the life not lived. And that comparison, that's unbearable. They will try to stop you not because you're wrong, but because you're right. Because you're living proof that their sacrifices weren't necessary, that their fears were overblown, that their limitations were self-imposed. Your existence is an indictment of their choices, and they can't forgive you for that. The tempest doesn't apologize for its nature. The hurricane doesn't pause to consider the inconvenience. The storm doesn't stop because houses were built in its path. And you weren't designed to shrink yourself because they built their lives assuming you would never arrive. You weren't born to please their need for calm waters and clear skies. Let them board up their windows when they see you coming. Let them huddle in their safe spaces, clinging to their certainties. Let them convince themselves that if they just wait you out, everything will return to their version of normal. Because here's the hidden truth. You're not passing through. You're not temporary weather. You're climate change personified. You disrupt the system by refusing to be seasonal, by maintaining your intensity regardless of their comfort levels, by demonstrating that strength isn't something you turn on and off based on social appropriateness. You are the constant reminder that wild forces exist, that untamed power persists, that authentic existence doesn't conform to their schedules. They wanted you to be a passing shower, easily managed and quickly forgotten. But you're the kind of storm that reshapes landscapes, that forces adaptation, that divides time into before and after. You're the phenomenon they'll reference for years, the event that changed everything, the force that proved their old world couldn't withstand new realities. So do differently. Be the storm they fear but need, the disruption that clears out dead wood, the power that reminds them what authentic force looks like when it stops apologizing for its existence. Only the strong weather storms, but only the courageous choose to become one. You chose. Now let them deal with the consequences of your awakening. They threw everything at you. Every strategy, every manipulation, every carefully crafted cage designed to contain what they couldn't control. They used guilt, shame, fear, obligation, social pressure, institutional authority. They assembled entire armies of influence to make you bend, break, conform, submit. Money couldn't buy your compliance. Status couldn't tempt your surrender. Threats couldn't force your submission. Promises couldn't seduce your cooperation. Every tool in their arsenal, every weapon they'd successfully used on countless others, every technique that had never failed before, all of it bounced off you like rain off stone. Watch their faces as realization dawns. That moment when they understand their methods don't work on you. When they recognize that every attempt to limit your freedom only reveals the limits of their power. When they finally grasp that you're not refusing to be caught, you're simply uncatchable by their primitive traps. They built prisons out of expectations, cells constructed from social norms, chains forged from the need for approval, spent fortunes on locks that couldn't hold you, walls that couldn't contain you, guards that couldn't intimidate you. And you walked through it all like it was mist, like it was nothing, like their elaborate containment systems were children's games. The truth hurts when they calculate the investment. All those resources poured into subduing one person who refused to recognize their authority. All that energy expended trying to dim one light that wouldn't stop shining. All those strategies deployed against one force that never acknowledged their right to govern it. Their failure isn't just about you escaping. It's about you never even acknowledging the cage existed. While they built walls, you walked through doors they didn't know were there. While they designed traps, you operated on planes they couldn't access. While they planned containment, you were already free in dimensions they couldn't imagine. Every failed attempt is public record of their impotence. Every broken chain is evidence their power was always illusion. Every futile strategy is proof that what they convinced everyone was inevitable, controllable authority, was actually just mass agreement to pretend it mattered. And you stopped pretending. You didn't rebel dramatically, didn't declare war, didn't fight them on their terms. You did something far more devastating. You simply refused to participate in the game where they held all the cards. You disrupt the system by not acknowledging its legitimacy over your existence, by treating their ultimate weapons as irrelevant inconveniences. Their desperation grows with each failure. They double down, triple down, mortgage their credibility trying to prove they can still control you. Because if they can't, if one person can simply opt out of their entire framework, then everything they've built their identities around crumbles. Their power was always dependent on your consent. Only the strong resist the full weight of institutional pressure. But you're doing something beyond resistance. You're demonstrating that what looks like solid walls to them are transparent suggestions to you. What feels like unbreakable chains to them are decorative jewelry you remove at will. What they experience as ultimate authority, you recognize as theatrical performance. Watch how it breaks them, how each failure chips away at their certainty, how repeated defeats erode their confidence in systems they thought were absolute, how your continued freedom, despite their best efforts, forces them to question everything they believed about control, power, and inevitability. They'll blame their tools, their timing, their resources, never admitting the fundamental truth. You can't trap something that exists beyond your conceptual frameworks. You can't contain what operates in dimensions your maps don't chart. You can't imprison what was never bound by the physics of your reality in the first place. Their failure isn't your victory, it's your nature. You didn't defeat their systems through superior strategy. You transcended them through authentic existence. You didn't break their chains with greater force. You demonstrated the chains were always imaginary, enforceable only against those who believed in them. You weren't born to please their need for predictable, manageable subjects. So let them keep trying. Let them exhaust their resources, their credibility, their sanity, attempting to prove they can still cage you. Because every failure is a lesson for everyone watching. Every broken trap is proof to others that freedom is possible. Every unsuccessful attempt broadcasts the hidden truth. Their power over you was always fiction. You're no longer interested in reading. Every battle you fought carved something into your bones. Not scars that weaken, but markings that define. Patterns etched so deep they become part of your architecture. The conflicts didn't break you down to nothing. They broke you down to truth, to essence, to the core that can't be destroyed because it was forged in the very fire meant to consume it. There's a moment in every war, internal or external, when the pain stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like awakening. When you stop asking why this is happening to you and start recognizing what it's revealing about you. That shift, that pivot from victim to witness to participant in your own transformation, that's where everything changes forever. The person you were before the conflict, that version is gone, and mourning it is pointless. That self was built on untested assumptions, comfortable lies, inherited beliefs about your limitations. The fire didn't destroy you. It revealed that those limitations were never real. Just stories you told yourself before you had reason to question them. What emerges from sustained conflict isn't damaged, it's distilled. All the excess burned away, all the pretense melted off, all the unnecessary weight shed in the heat of necessity. You become lean, essential, pure in ways that comfort could never achieve. Your pain becomes strength not metaphorically, but literally, molecularly, fundamentally. The transformation isn't gentle. It doesn't ask permission or wait for readiness. It happens in the middle of chaos, during the fight, while you're still bleeding. You don't get to retreat to a monastery and emerge enlightened. You evolve in real time, under pressure, with no guarantee of survival. That's what makes it authentic, permanent, unbreakable. People who've never been through it look at the aftermath and call it trauma. They see the changes in you and diagnose damage, disorder, dysfunction. But only the strong who've walked through their own fire recognize what you carry. Not wounds, weapons, not scars, armor, not damage. Power that only exists on the other side of what should have destroyed you. The conflict strips away your tolerance for mediocrity, for shallow connections, for convenient lies, for comfortable numbness. Once you've felt everything, once you've survived the full weight of your own darkness, meeting external pressure, you can't go back to pretending surface-level existence is enough. You become allergic to fake, too easy to safe. This is the transformation they fear in you. Not that you're broken, but that you're unbreakable now. Not that you're damaged, but that you're dangerous to their illusions. Not that you lost yourself, but that you found the version of yourself they have no framework to control, predict, or diminish. The truth hurts when you realize the conflict was necessary, that you wouldn't have chosen this path, but this path chose you, and fighting it would have been the real tragedy. That every moment of suffering was purchase price for clarity, freedom, strength that can't be bought, taught, or gifted, only earned through surviving what kills others. The monster they see when they look at you now. That's not what the conflict created. That's what the conflict revealed. You were always this powerful, this intense, this capable of surviving impossible conditions. You just didn't know it yet. The fire didn't make you dangerous. It burned away the disguise that made you seem safe. You move differently now. Speak differently. Exist differently. There's a weight to your presence that wasn't there before. A gravity that comes from having been to the bottom and choosing to climb back. Not because you had to, but because you decided you weren't done yet. That decision, made in your darkest moment, that's where your real power lives. They'll ask what happened to the old you, the easier version, the one that smiled more and questioned less. And you'll realize you can't explain transformation to those who've only experienced change. Can't describe awakening to those still sleeping. Can't translate the language of fire to those who've only known room temperature existence. The conflict made you fluent in truth that has no comfortable translation, gave you vision that sees through their illusions, granted you courage born from having nothing left to lose because you already lost everything, and discovered you're still here, still standing, still capable of making them uncomfortable with your intensity. This transformation is irreversible. You can't unknow what the conflict taught you, can't unsee what the darkness revealed, can't unfeel what surviving impossible pressure demonstrated about your capacity. You are permanently altered, fundamentally different, and trying to go back would be like asking fire to return to wood. The change is complete, chemical, absolute. So here you stand, at the edge of everything you've become. The journey through pain, through resistance, through transformation has brought you to this moment where past and future collide in the present. You've seen what you're capable of surviving, witnessed your own power emerge from impossible circumstances like a phoenix that didn't burn but was forged in flames. You discovered that what they called weakness was actually dormant strength, waiting for pressure to activate it, for crisis to awaken it, for necessity to unleash it. Everything you thought would destroy you actually built you into something unbreakable, something they have no framework to understand or control. The question isn't whether you survived, you clearly did, but what version of yourself emerged from that crucible. But knowing your power and wielding it are different things entirely, separated by a chasm of choice and consequence. Understanding you're the monster they feared and choosing to become that force without apology, without dilution, without compromise. That's the final threshold most never cross. This is where the journey separates the truly awakened from those who merely survived and went back to sleep. This is where most people stop, freeze, retreat back into comfortable mediocrity because the next step requires too much courage. They glimpse their true nature in the mirror of their darkest moment, see the power they possess, feel the strength they've accumulated, and then they spend the rest of their lives trying to stuff it back into acceptable packaging, shrinking themselves back down to manageable size. The truth hurts, but here it is, raw and unfiltered. You have a choice now that will define everything that comes next. You can take everything you've learned, every hard-won piece of clarity purchased with blood and tears, every scar that became armor through sheer necessity, every lesson etched into your bones by fire and pressure, and you can choose to be small again. You can pretend you didn't wake up, perform amnesia about your own awakening, act like the transformation never happened. You can stuff your authentic self back into the costume of who you used to be, who they needed you to be, who everyone expects you to remain. You can perform ignorance of your own truth to make others comfortable, sacrifice your freedom for their peace of mind, trade your power for their approval. Millions do it every single day, making that quiet surrender, that slow suicide of the soul in exchange for belonging. Or you can do differently, and that choice terrifies everyone invested in your containment. You can accept that you weren't born to please the comfortable masses who traded their souls for safety, who surrendered their authenticity for acceptance, who chose numbness over the raw intensity of living fully awake. You can embrace that you disrupt the system not as a bug, but as a feature of your existence, not as a problem to fix, but as a force to unleash. You can own the authentic power you've become and stop apologizing for the space you occupy in a world designed for smaller souls, dimmer lights, quieter voices. You can choose to honor the transformation instead of betraying it, to respect the awakening instead of denying it, to wield the strength you've earned instead of hiding it. This is the path less traveled because it requires constant courage, relentless resistance to the pull of comfortable conformity. This isn't about becoming cruel or careless, reckless or irresponsible. It's something far more nuanced and intentional. This is about refusing to shrink anymore, rejecting every invitation to diminish yourself for others. Comfort, saying no to the thousand small compromises that collectively constitute self-betrayal. It's about recognizing that your freedom threatens their cages, and that's their problem to solve, not yours to manage, not yours to apologize for, not yours to sacrifice. It's about understanding that they will never understand you, and releasing the exhausting hope that someday, somehow, someone will finally get it, will finally see you clearly, will finally validate your truth. They won't, because understanding would require them to question everything they've built their lives around. And you don't need them to understand. You never did. That need was installed in you by systems designed to keep you seeking approval you were never meant to require. Wake up to life means more than just consciousness, more than just awareness. It demands active participation in your own existence. It means making choices that honor the transformation you went through instead of betraying it for temporary comfort, fleeting approval, or the illusion of safety. It means remembering, when things get easier, when the crisis passes, when pressure releases, that easy is where dreams go to die and authentic selves go to suffocate slowly. It means staying sharp when the world votes for dullness, remaining intense when everyone else chooses numbness, maintaining your edge when comfort beckons with promises of rest that's really just surrender. Wake up to life is a daily choice, a constant commitment, a relentless refusal to go back to sleep no matter how appealing unconsciousness appears. Stop seeking approval from systems designed to keep you manageable, from people who need you small to feel adequate, from institutions built on the premise that conformity equals health. Stop waiting for permission to exist at full intensity, to take up space, to shine at full brightness without apology or dimming. Stop negotiating with people who need you diminished to feel secure, who require your weakness to validate their choices, who demand your surrender to justify their own. Your pain became strength, not so you could waste it trying to fit back into spaces you've outgrown, relationships you've evolved beyond, identities you've shed like snakeskin. It became strength so you could build entirely new worlds, create unprecedented possibilities, forge paths where none existed before. Here's the hidden truth they really don't want you to know, the secret that undermines their entire control structure. Only the strong resist, but only the truly awakened choose to stay awake when sleep offers such sweet escape. It's easier to go back to sleep, to pretend you didn't see what you saw in that crucible, to act like you're still the person you were before everything changed. Consciousness requires constant effort in a world addicted to numbness, perpetual vigilance in a society invested in keeping you unconscious. Staying awake when everyone around you sleeps is lonely, exhausting, relentless work, but it's also the only way to remain authentic, the only path to genuine freedom, the only choice that honors what you survived to become. So what will you do now, in this moment of decision that will ripple through every tomorrow? Now that you know your power, now that you've felt your strength move through you like electricity, now that you understand that your authenticity is the weapon they can never defend against because it requires no attack, just pure existence, will you use it or bury it? Will you honor it or betray it? Will you build a life that reflects this awakening? Or will you slowly compromise it away until you become acceptable again, manageable again, safe again? The choice is binary. There's no middle ground. Either you stay true to the transformation, or you betray everything you survived to achieve. You incommoda the system by existing fully, by refusing to play small, by demonstrating that transformation through pain isn't just survival, but evolution into something they have no framework to contain, predict, or control. You are the living question mark at the end of their declarative statements about what's possible, what's acceptable, what's allowed in their carefully ordered world. You are proof that their rules are suggestions, their norms are choices, their limitations are illusions maintained through collective agreement. And when you stop agreeing, when you opt out of their consensus reality, when you demonstrate freedom they claim doesn't exist, you become dangerous, not through violence, but through example. The final challenge isn't surviving what broke you. You already proved you could do that. The final challenge is choosing, every single day, to remain the person forged in that fire instead of slowly softening back into the comfortable, acceptable, manageable version that keeps everyone else relaxed and unthreatened. Only the courageous maintain their edge when the world votes for dullness, keep their intensity when society demands moderation, preserve their authenticity when conformity offers belonging. This is harder than surviving the crisis because it's not dramatic. It's not a single battle, but 1,000 small choices made in quiet moments when no one's watching. They will try to stop you, but not with force this time, not with obvious opposition or direct confrontation. They'll use something far more insidious: comfort, ease, the seduction of belonging. With offers of acceptance if you just tone it down a little, just compromise a bit, just meet them halfway, which always means moving toward them, never them toward you. With promises of love and connection, if you just give up this exhausting commitment to truth, if you just pretend you're who you used to be. This is the most dangerous phase, when freedom feels heavy instead of liberating, when chains start to look like rest instead of restriction, when surrender disguises itself as wisdom instead of defeat. But you've already seen behind the curtain, witnessed how the machinery works, understood the cost of every compromise. You know what comfort costs when purchased through self-betrayal, what ease demands when traded for authenticity, what belonging requires when the price is your truth. You understand that acceptance bought by shrinking yourself is just another prison, maybe prettier than the obvious onesie, but still a cage. You felt what it means to be free, to be authentic, to be powerful in ways that don't require anyone else's validation, permission, or approval. Can you really go back after tasting that, after feeling that aliveness? Should you? Even if you could. This is not a conclusion, not an ending, not a final answer wrapped in certainty. This is an invitation to live in the question, to exist in the tension between who you were and who you're becoming. An open question without a right answer, because the answer is your life, lived moment by moment, choice by choice. Compromise, refused, or accepted. What will you choose when the awakening fades from crisis intensity into ordinary consciousness? When being awake becomes your new normal instead of your dramatic achievement? When your power stops feeling special and starts feeling like responsibility, like a weight you carry that others don't even see? Who will you be when no one's watching? When there's no audience to perform for? When the only person you answer to is the reflection in your mirror staring back with eyes that know every truth you've ever tried to hide?